Acknowledgement of country. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present and future. I am Nomad. Look out for trivia questions in this video. As we change pace once again, we have not forgotten about your research into your ancestors. As you know, we use the slow-paced approach. By now, you would have built your tree and have many more questions. A heads up on episode 13, we will bring us back to our handwritten chart and our digital progress. Before we do all of that, we need to address the following: Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and First Fleeters. Then, in our next episode, Convicts. Our presenters for this episode are Nomad, Jedda, and Elena. You would know by now that Jedda has an Indigenous background. She is very well travelled and is very proud of her heritage.
Our heritage goes back tens of thousands of years. It is difficult to pinpoint exactly. However, as science advances, we get closer to knowing more. How long this will take is anyone's guess.
Some non-Indigenous people ask, what is the most appropriate term to refer to Indigenous peoples of Australia? One of the best answers we found was, it's complicated. From an article written by Luke Pearson, who owns and runs Indigenous X.
When making reference to Indigenous peoples, you need to understand, we are referring to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. They are distinct groups comprising many local languages and cultural subgroups across the entire continent.
The Indigenous peoples have adapted to the many environments. The continent, known as Australia, from the tropical north, the arid inland and coastal regions. All of this has established one of the world's oldest continuous cultural societies.
Much has been written. You may have come across this whilst investigating the many resources we mentioned in our last two episodes about Australian records.
There are a few things everyone needs to understand about the history of this land prior to British colonization in 1788. Besides having language groups, kinship systems, customary law, dreaming and seasonal movements, all are tied to country.
From 1788, the imposing foreign legal and land concepts were extreme. One of the most important was the claim terra nullius, empty land. Many questions come up which we will not discuss here.
As some may be aware, there were many conflicts across the land. We believe these were the Australian Wars. Diseases were introduced, and many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples were displaced.
It can be difficult to relate to the fact that people had restricted movements, imposed religious beliefs, and cultural controls made on the population. A formal assimilation policy in the 1930s aimed making those of Aboriginal descent live like white Australians. This is the stolen generation, where children were removed from their families, under government policies spanning from the late 1800s into the 1970s.
Over the years, petitions, the Mabo case, and even a referendum commenced the very slow process of recognition. It continues. For how long, no one knows.
Before we move into everything, we all need to understand Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' cultures. They differ in so many ways from Western culture. We will discuss this briefly here. Our main aim in the series relates to family history, our ancestors. However, this is extremely important in understanding the culture context. What is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders culture? Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders culture is the world's oldest continuing cultural tradition, centered on spiritual beliefs such as the dreaming and Elena custom, complex kinship and language systems, and deeply held obligations to care for country, land, sea, sky, and waterways, family, and community. These values are expressed through story, song, dance, ceremony, art, and everyday ways of sharing and being with one another. Elena custom is the Torres Strait Islanders term for the way of life and traditional culture of Torres Strait Islander peoples.
Due to the vast number of cultural activities conducted by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, we have created a list. To find out more, refer to the source list in an information sheet titled Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.
Core Culture List. This list presents a selection of widespread and foundational practices across many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. The order is not strict, but reflects practices that are foundational across many mobs and regions.
1. Dreaming stories. Explain how ancestral beings created land, animals, and people. Underpin law, identity, and relationship to country. 2. Kinship and skin name systems. Govern marriage, descent, social roles, and obligations, and are central to social organisation in many Aboriginal groups. 3. Totem-based responsibilities. Tie people to specific animals, plants, or land features, creating obligations to protect and care for those entities. 4. Corroborees. Ceremonial gatherings of song, dance, body painting, and costume used to connect with the dreaming and transmit lore and history. 5. Sorry business. Funerary and mourning practices that honour the deceased, guide the spirit, and support the grieving family and community.
6. Smoke ceremony Sivrani rituals using smoldering native plants to welcome, heal, cleanse, and spiritually prepare people and places for important transitions and ceremonies. 7. Fire stick farming, cultural burning. Controlled seasonal burning of vegetation to manage hunting grounds, reduce fuel loads, and enhance biodiversity. 8. Torres Strait Islander burial rituals and tombstone opening ceremonies. Multi-stage practices that include feasts, sharing possessions, and a formal joyous unveiling of the grave marker to release the spirit. 9. Manake clan songs and songlines. These songs and songlines belonging to specific kin groups that encode spiritual law, kinship, and country. 10. Inma and women's ceremonial practices. Be women's song and dance ceremonies that embody Tujukurpa and sustain community identity and cultural knowledge.
11. Men's initiation ceremonies. Rituals that teach young men about their legal responsibilities, spiritual law, kinship, and sacred knowledge. 12. Oral history transmission. Song, dance, story. Knowledge passed by speaking, storytelling, song, and dance, making performance the core medium of education and law teaching. 13. Art as knowledge carrier. Rock art, bark painting, body painting, and contemporary art that encode law, dreaming stories, and totemic knowledge. 14. Indigenous astronomy. Knowledge of stars, constellations, and celestial movements used for navigation, seasonal calendars, ceremonial timing, and encoding dreaming narratives within the night sky. 15. Gender-specific business and restricted knowledge. Deeply held distinctions between men's and women's knowledge, ceremonies, and law.
16. Trade, gift exchange, and reciprocity e.g. Ram diplomacy, ceremonial and everyday practices of giving and receiving that reinforce alliances, obligations, and social bonds. 17. Torres Strait Islander literature through song and dance. Singing and dancing as the primary literary and historical medium, conveying stories of sea, weather, ancestors, and totemic gods. 18. Cultural protocols and respectful visiting. ET rules and expectations for how to behave, seek permission, and acknowledge traditional custodians when entering another group's country. 19. Two-way governance and elders' authority. Governance models that place elders and cultural protocol at the center of decision-making, blending traditional law with modern organizational structures. 20. Welcome to country and acknowledgement of country. The contemporary expressions that draw on dreaming-linked narratives to introduce visitors to a group's territory and ancestral presence in country.
21. Infant and childhood betrothal practices. Tuvri traditional arrangements of marriage before or shortly after birth, cemented by long-term gift-giving and services between families. 22. Sea country and reef-based management. Torres Strait Islander practices of navigating, fishing, and tending to reefs and inshore waters over many generations. 23. Shell midden making and use. Thuvin long-term accumulation of shell food remains at favored coastal and river edge camps, marking repeated use and occupation. 24. Respect for elders and senior knowledge holders. Norms that prioritize elders' experience, wisdom, and ceremonial knowledge in decision-making and education. 25. Respect for women's and men's knowledge spheres. Cultural recognition that certain ceremonies, law, and land care roles are held within gender-specific domains, shaping how responsibilities are divided and protected.
This overview list focuses on widely documented and foundational practices. includes only a subset of the many cultural practices found across hundreds of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Many place-specific and kinship-specific practices are held in oral tradition and by elders, and cannot be fully described or captured here.
Australian records relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples' family history. We have created a list that is not exhaustive relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and where to locate information about Indigenous people. With all the sites, it's a matter of looking around each of them. As we say, you never know what you may find. You may be taken on an emotional roller coaster, so please be aware when doing your research.
Australia. National Archives of Australia. The National Archives holds a significant number of records about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and history. National Film and Sound Archive of Australia. There are a number of stories relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in the National Film and Sound Archive. We did a search to locate collections, audio and video you may find interesting. The archive has sights, sounds and stories of Australia from the 1890s to now.
National Library of Australia. The National Library has guides to assist with family history research. There are a number of resources to be found that may take you on an emotional roller coaster, so please be aware when doing your research. National Museum Australia. Within the museum's site, we did a search on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander experiences, and a vast number of records were displayed. These covered media, audio, transcripts and exhibitions, to name a few. The Australian Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies. This site has a range of resources available from before you start, resources and where to get help. They also have a downloadable family history kit.
States and territories. Australian Capital Territory. No specific details were located except links to other locations. New South Wales. This project is a partnership between Museums of History, NSW, and the Aboriginal Languages Trust, NSW. Its aim is to improve access for First Nations people to important archival material about culture, kinship, stories, and languages within the State Archives collection. Check out the First Nations page to see what is currently occurring at the museum, from talks and exhibitions to latest news.
Northern Territory. We did not identify specific resources during our search that relate directly to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander family history, though many records exist in other formats and locations. Queensland. The state archives hold a vast number of records that relate to individuals, families, and historical materials. As previously advised, you are advised about the sensitivity of information held. Also, language used in the past is different to what is used today. We recommend that you read How to Find Records and the brief guide link shown under Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Peoples Records. State Library. There are a number of collections listed on the website. These include photos, manuscripts, oral histories, and digital stories. As usual, always check out these collections as you never know what you may find.
South Australia. State Records. On this page, the two sections of interest as we see it are Finding Your Aboriginal History and Guides to Aboriginal History. State Library. Within this site, you will find various guides and collections. Like most information, you will need to go looking for the relevant details. Remember to always have a research question, and this may help from dropping down into rabbit holes. Genealogy. Essay. Check out the online library catalog and do a search.
Tasmania. Libraries Tasmania. The library site provides details on how to start your research. As we have discussed, start with yourself and move backwards. Once you have identified which side of your family identifies as Aboriginal, you are able to use the information within the notes section to move your research forward, or as we know, backwards. When it comes to researching, the process may take some time to obtain a result. The process will involve a lot of searching at times, and there may be dead ends and red herrings thrown into the mix. Persistence is what it takes to get results.
Victoria. Public Records Office, Victoria. Scrolling down on the PROV page, you will come across information outlining the content. A little further down the page, you will come across What do I need to know before I start?, which should be read the first time you are on this page. Then, you will see what is available online and whether you need to visit Prov. Check out what is available online and see where it takes you. State Library. It took us a bit of digging to locate this link. If you do get lost, we located the guide from the main page of the State Library Victoria. Explore our collection. From the next screen under the tab heading Search and Discover drop-down list, select Research Guides. Here you will see, second on the list, Aboriginal People and Family History. From here, above the Welcome, are several tabs. If it is your first visit, select Get Started, and then the fun begins. Explore and discover.
Western Australia. The State Records Office holds historical sets of records from colonial and state government agencies that document interaction with Aboriginal people throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. This has been taken directly from the site. Scroll down the page and you will come across a list of records available. To find out more, to the right of each selection use the Show More with a drop-down. You can then go from there and hopefully locate what you are looking for.
We have covered a significant range of information relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, from brief background history to culture to the where-to in relation to family history research. We know we have not covered everything, but we do hope that there is enough detail here to get everyone thinking, no matter where you have come from. Go out, explore and discover.
We will now move on to First Fleeters and begin with some questions and hopefully answering them as we go.
First Fleeters. What or who are First Fleeters? Why are they seemingly special? We always have questions. It is something that happens a lot within family history research. If you don't ask, you'll never know.
My question is, was it those on board the first ship to arrive, or the entire armada? How many ships were there? Who was on board? I believe a question needed here is why. Then we ask, why did these ships arrive from England and take so long to get here?
In our attempt to answer these questions, we are sure that some people will not be happy with our output. Please note all the information has been checked and sourced. The full source list for First Fleeters can be provided, if required.
The term First Fleeters refers to those people who arrived on Australian shores in 1788. We will be referring to the country as what it is known today. Hopefully, this stops all the confusion or lessens it.
The journey took 8 months due to several stops along the way. 1 week in Tenerife, about 5 weeks in Rio de Janeiro, about 5 weeks in Cape Town. Stocking up on food, water, livestock, and doing ship repairs.
The first fleet consisted of 11 ships sailing from Great Britain on 13 May 1787, with the first ship to arrive being the HMS Supply at Botany Bay on the 18th of January 1788. The Armada moved on to Port Jackson on the 26th of January. The voyage intended to establish a convict settlement on the east coast of Australia, then known as New South Wales, on the continent referred to at the time as New Holland. This was due to Britain losing its American convict destinations after the American Revolutionary War, prompting the search for a new penal colony.
The 11 ships consisted of 2 Royal Navy ships, 3 store ships, and 6 convict ships. The estimated number on board varies slightly by source, between 1,000 to 1,500 people.
First Fleet, ships, captains, and more. As already stated, the First Fleet consisted of 11 ships. The following details provide the names of the ships, the captains, any surgeons and matrons, if any were found. There were 2 Royal Navy ships named, HMS Sirius and HMAT Supply. The captain of the Sirius was John Hunter, with George Worgan serving as the ship's surgeon. Lieutenant Henry Lidgebird Ball was in command of the Supply. Captain Arthur Phillip sailed aboard HMS Sirius before transferring to HMAT Supply at Cape Town. John White, Surgeon General, being responsible for the entire fleet. There were no formally appointed matrons on the First Fleet ships. The care of women on board the ships was generally managed by the wives of Marines or sailors. There were 3 store ships. In alphabetical order, the first was the Borrowdale under Master Hobson Reed's charge. Captain Robert Brown was in command of the Fishburne and the Golden Grove under William Sharp. Each ship had 22 crew upon departure from England. Those in command of the 6 convict ships are as follows: Alexander, Master Duncan Sinclair; Charlotte, Captain Thomas Gilbert; Friendship, Master Francis Walton; Lady Penrhyn, Master William Server; Prince of Wales, Master John Manson; and Scarborough, Captain John Marshall. Other details about these convict ships are shown here. Records indicate that on board all of the 6 convict ships were 174 crew, 228 Marines, and 796 convicts, consisting of 600 males and 196 females.
First Fleeters were the founding group of European settlement. Their arrival in 1788 marked the beginning of permanent British colonization of the continent. This group of people endured the same as others traveling from Europe: starvation and scurvy.
The descendants of the First Fleeters, who trace direct lineage, have set up groups who preserve names and journals as national heritage. The Fellowship of First Fleeters was founded in 1968, representing descendants of the 1788 settlers with about 15 chapters or groups.
Despite all the fuss about First Fleeters, we have to also remember the conflicts towards the Ora people around the area now known as Sydney. The impact on the indigenous population was horrific. Diseases like smallpox, influenza, and measles killed between 50 to 90% within years. The way of life for these indigenous people collapsed within 20 years.
The settlers chopped down trees, and Captain Arthur Phillip, Captain General and Governor-in-Chief, ordered the cultivation of cleared lands. The effects on how the indigenous people dealt with the fire regime of scrub was disrupted, with the aggressive clearing and ring barking of trees plus the overgrazing by cattle and sheep impacted the grass and soil, altering the ecosystems. By 1921, 44% of New South Wales had been cleared, mostly during the 19th century expansion, following the First Fleet's small initial clearings around Sydney Cove.
So were First Fleeters special? Yes, but so were the Ora who resisted them. Both groups faced starvation, disease, and survival. History isn't just one story, it is all the stories asking to be found.
Wow, what a journey! We do hope that this information has been useful in one way or another. If you had no interest in this content, we do hope that you have a better understanding of Australian history and how the nation has unfolded to where we are today.
Before we end out this episode, there is a handout available of the sources used in gathering the information. All you need to do is ask and we will go from there.
Clarification. The following clarifications have come about after a meeting with an Aboriginal elder who has viewed the content of this presentation. Throughout the culture slides, you may have seen the word law. This is interchanged with the word law, which has a stronger meaning. In connection with the "it's complicated," it is also complex. Please realize all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's culture is not the same. What one mob has as their culture may be different to another mob in another area. It's like, not everyone is the same. Next time, we were to have covered convicts in this episode, but with so much information, it was decided to cover this subject separately. We have learnt quite a lot from our investigations into Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and First Fleeters. Of course, this holds up our schedule, but we are getting there. Slow-paced and having fun. Oh, nearly forgot. We will also be discussing rabbit holes in the next episode. See you in 2 weeks. With all of us here, we would be delighted for you to join our family. I am sure you know the drill. Click like, subscribe, and of course, please make a comment.